Good evening and thanks for joining us. We begin with news about the new coronavirus outbreak. The World Health Organization has now declared it an international public health emergency. It's concerned countries with weak healthcare systems may not be able to cope. The WHO stressed 99% of cases are in China, and it praised that country's response. The numbers, though, keep rising. Chinese authorities are reporting more than 9,400 confirmed cases worldwide. The vast majority are in China, and there are thousands more suspected cases. Every province in mainland China now has confirmed cases. On this map, the darker the red, the higher the number. Wuhan, the capital of Hubei province, where this outbreak began, has the most, over 1,000 cases. 213 people have now died from this new strain of coronavirus. All of them are in China. And the WHO says China, which has put millions of people under quarantine and is rapidly building new hospitals to handle all the sick people, has set a new standard for outbreak response.
I have never seen in my life this kind of mobilization, the measures they are taking, which I believe will reverse the tide. But not only what they're doing is protecting their people, but I know from the figures also, you know that it's protecting the rest of the world.
There are more than 100 confirmed cases outside mainland China, scattered across at least 19 countries and territories. India has confirmed its first case, and so has the Philippines. Canada's health minister says the risk here remains low, and declaring a global health emergency does not change that. The government is still working on a plan to airlift Canadians out of Wuhan, the center of the outbreak. We'll get to that in just a moment, but we begin with Redmond Shannon on the WHO declaration and what it means.
This was the World Health Organization's third emergency meeting on the coronavirus outbreak. And on this occasion, after hours of debate, the panel voted to declare a global health emergency.
The main reason for this declaration is not because of what is happening in China, but because of what is happening in other countries.
The head of the WHO repeatedly praised China's response to the outbreak, saying it can turn the tide.
It's actually doing more than China is required to do. This is to protect especially countries with weaker health system.
Labelling this a global health emergency means more international resources for prevention and more help in finding a vaccine. But it doesn't mean restricting travel for now.
WHO doesn't recommend and actually opposes any restrictions for travel and trade or other measures against China.
Regardless of the decision, concern about the virus has already spread globally. Air France is among the growing list of airlines suspending all flights to and from mainland China.
C'est pas une demande de l'État français.
The head of the cabin crew union said staff had demanded the airline take action. 6,000 cruise ship passengers were stopped from disembarking at an Italian port after a Chinese woman on board showed symptoms of coronavirus. It was later confirmed she was not infected. Turkey is among the countries sending planes to bring citizens home. Spanish and British citizens will be held in quarantine for 2 weeks when they arrive back on Friday. Meanwhile, the Philippines and India have both declared their first cases. And in Thailand, stores are selling out of face masks. This Chinese virologist says it could take 2 to 4 weeks before the virus is under control. But at the current rate, that could mean hundreds of thousands of people could be infected by then. Redmond Shannon, Global News, London.
Canada has not acted as fast as some other countries to get people out of Wuhan, where there's been a lockdown now for days. Almost 200 Canadians who are stranded want help getting home. The government has a plane in place, but beyond that, the logistics are still being worked out, as Abigail Beeman explains.
Okay. We'll talk to you again shortly. As soon as I have news, I will tell you.
But for Monty Gisborne in Coquitlam, BC, and his wife Daniela Liu in Wuhan, there's been no news. They finally got a call from Canadian officials, a formal phone interview they said would happen in an hour. But 12 hours later, nothing.
I'm so scared and confusing because no information.
Liu, along with their daughter Dominica, also in Wuhan, are permanent Canadian residents. They don't even know if they'll be allowed on the Canadian plane whenever it arrives.
They keep focusing on the fact that Canadians will be on that airplane. What does that mean? I mean, to us, it's got a different, perhaps, definition than maybe most other people.
So the risk to Canadians in Canada continues to be low. We have strong measures in place.
But no one can say when the plane Ottawa has secured will arrive, nor what will happen in terms of screening or isolation.
We are flying a non-commercial flight into a new country that is under quarantine, that has some very strict protocols about where planes can land and what the protocols might be. And so that requires negotiations with the Chinese government.
Trudeau was asked multiple times about a Globe and Mail report saying the government has already helped some Canadian diplomat families get out, but he wouldn't answer as so many other Canadians struggle to get consular help.
I can assure you that our consular staff in China, in Beijing, but also right across the country, is fully engaged on this issue.
We are in history right now.
Montrealer Felicity Fang is visiting her parents in Wuhan. Her father now helping build a new hospital for coronavirus patients, and she's worried about him.
From the government who told us, if you're staying inside, the chance of your survival is much bigger than if you go out. Even you wear a lot of protection, your gloves, your glasses, and most importantly, your mask has to be changed like every 4 hours.
So many considerations as Ottawa tries to figure out how to bring Canadians home. The latest information is 196 people want consular help of some kind, and China is saying if anyone is sick, they won't be allowed to leave. Abigail Beeman, Global News, Ottawa.
This virus is a reminder how interconnected the world is. Apart from making so many people in China sick, it's put a chill on doing business with that country. The World Health Organization made a point to say today China should not be punished because of this outbreak, and it opposes any restrictions on travel and trade. Companies that rely on the country for their supply chain, though, are worried about production as factories sit idle. And today, the American Commerce Secretary said the blow to China could be good for American jobs. Jackson Prosco reports.
The world's factory, China, is slowing down production. Car makers have idled plants. Companies like Google and Facebook have closed their offices.
The emerging threat from a new strain of coronavirus is a reminder of the need to be vigilant.
Economic experts have warned it all poses a risk to the already shaky global economy if companies can't manufacture their goods and if consumer demand in the world's second largest economy drops off. In China, stores from IKEA to Starbucks have already shut their doors.
What's harder to predict is what happens over the longer term.
The SARS outbreak in 2003 cost the world economy more than $33 billion. Nearly 2 decades later, China is a much bigger player, now Canada's second largest trading partner.
They're far more connected, and that means that when you have something like the coronavirus, the impact felt throughout the world could be far more significant.
One example, the ubiquitous iPhone, made in China. There are warnings that production could be vulnerable to supply chain or labor disruptions. And as airlines cancel flights to and from the country, the demand side is taking a hit. Chinese tourists, the highest per capita spenders, are staying home. We need Chinese customers because it's Chinese customers who buy the most, says this worried Paris shopkeeper.
Economy come to a halt.
In Washington, President Trump's Commerce Secretary bluntly called coronavirus an economic win for the U.S.
I think it will help to accelerate the return of jobs to North America.
The reality is, with the world economy already slowing, everyone is at risk, even if the coronavirus is contained. Jackson Prosco, Global News, Washington.